Hey guys, welcome back to the Anime Torta. In this video, I'll be talking to you guys about my final thoughts and reactions to the anime School Days. We just recently finished watching the series, and this is my post reaction video to those episodes. But before I get into that, I wanted to let you guys know that I did do some looking around information on School Days after watching the last episode, and I did that because I didn't want to look up more information before watching the anime, because then I might run into some spoilers or something like that. I found out that School Days was actually based on a visual novel. It was created by a company called Overflow, to my understanding, and it is an adult video game, an adult visual novel. Essentially, it's a porn video game, which would explain the harem of the show, as well as all the sex scenes. They were based on the video game, the visual novel. This was lightened in the show, in the anime, because it was actually televised in Japan. Having said that, I found out that I may have watched the censored version of School Days, and this was due to a suicide and death accident that was going on in Japan at the time. We saw that blood was blacked out, as well as sexual scenes were edited or completely deleted, but I'm not sure if those scenes were in relation to those accidents. And it went far as to remove the final episode's air block with a footage of a boat. People call it a happy boat, but yeah, the censored blood at the end took away some of the impact and shock of what the original series intended, and it bummed me out finding out, because I wasn't able to get the full experience of the show. But even still, I might have ended up censoring the footage on my channel, because it might, depending on the extremity of the footage. But yeah, that just brief introduction. I'm gonna get now into my final thoughts. I wanted to talk to you guys about some things, some 3 points that I wanted to touch on. Some remarks that I said at the last episode of School Days that I kind of wanted to expand on, mainly for their controversial value that I might have bestowed upon myself when saying these things. And the first thing is that I've heard that the anime was a really good anime, and funny enough, when I was looking up information about School Days and comments on the show, a lot of people say they didn't like the anime, or they even went as far as to say it was a complete garbage of a show. The anime was recommended to me by some really good friends, and whenever the name of School Days was brought up amongst my friends who would recommend this anime to me, would say, "Oh man, that anime," or just start making some incoherent noises. It created some form of curiosity to me, and it gave it this whole controversial aspect to the show that just left me wanting to watch a show to see what it was all about. Especially because my friends would say you had to watch the ending and how crazy it was, and it actually really was a crazy ending. And to that, I really do think it was a pretty good anime. And I would probably say the same thing or make the same noises if I were talking to somebody else who has not watched the series. And then on my second point that I wanted to talk to you guys about is when I said that this anime, School Days, broke what I thought a traditional anime could be. And I understand how crazy that statement might sound, but hear me out for a second. School Days, when it first came out in 2007, it broke what I thought an anime could be. It went from a traditional ecchi harem anime to being something completely different. Not many anime that I watched at that time did something like that, to switch from one genre to a psychological and suspense anime that contained gore and body mutilation. And I also wanted to borrow another visual novel that's out there. So spoiler alert for anybody reading Doki Doki Literature Club. You might want to skip ahead. I'll put up a little timer where to skip to right here. But this visual novel is also very similar to School Days, Now, before I get ahead of myself, I never read this visual novel. It's just from what I've heard uh, in news articles and also summaries on the web. Brief summaries. I didn't even get too much into it. This visual novel video game actually came out last year, 2017, in September, and it essentially uses the same shock maneuver as School Days. It begins as a regular dating simulator and ends and becomes a psychological horror genre when one of the characters suddenly kills herself, depending on the routes you take in the game. And I wanted to bring this one video game up because like I said, there might be hundreds of novels that are like this in concept in writing, where you have this cutesy novel and then it ends or has elements of horror and suspense. But at this time in 2007, to have it become an anime adaptation and to be aired on TV, it's something that I've never seen before. There might have been novels to predate School Days and have inspired School Days to become what it was. It is very unique of a show to take the elements of such a genre to be televised, and it could have been worse, or not worse, but it could have been more extreme. But because it was televised, there had to be some sacrifices made, and at that attempt, I think that is revolutionary in my opinion. And then on my third point that I wanted to make, it was the ending of the show. The ending, for what it's worth, was actually a really great ending to the story and the plot. I mean, we can argue that the series fell through with all of its fan service tropes and niches that completely overshadowed the character building and better fluidity of the writing of the story as a whole. But with what we had and what we got at the end, we had enough information to create some base for the characters and, you know, to feel how we did at the very end for the characters. Like, I cared for Katsura. I rooted for Saionji at first, but then I realized that she was maybe being she was unintentionally being manipulated because she wanted to be with Ito from the very beginning, but she just wanted to be closer to him through her friends, kind of like using them. So I don't believe she wanted anything bad happen to anyone, but it kind of just went that way. I don't believe she expected it to actually work as it did, and obviously she didn't want it to end the way that it did either. With all that in mind, if she hadn't struck the first blow, then none of this would have transpired. And then with Ito, we hated Ito. There could be no way around it with this guy. And then with all that information established, I don't believe that Katsura would have had a other alternative ending that would have led her to be happy than the one that we got here, with Saionji killing Ito. Because with Ito being alive, he could have flip-flopped in interests. He is very unfaithful. He was very self-centered, and he was above all irresponsible. So if anything were to happen between their relationship, if Saionji never killed him, Katsura might have ended up dying from the neglect once again, or she would have become the killer, killing Ito or whoever it was that was standing in her way. So with Ito's death, you know, we got the satisfaction of having that prick out of the picture, but at the same time, it left opportunities for freedom for the girls affected, especially Katsura, so that she wouldn't be around that toxic asshole ever again. After getting revenge though and opening Saionji up, everything else was settled, even though we had the death of Ito. But Saionji was the only other person that was really putting a thorn in Katsura's happy ending. Katsura at the end was able to be with Ito on good terms, because before he died, they were officially together. It was spoken through his mouth that he was going to dedicate himself to her. Who knows how that would have played out at the end if he had stuck around. In her mind and Katsura's mind, everything was fine between them, and she was able to drift off into the ocean in their yacht together, essentially forever. because it is implied that Katsura dies eventually on that yacht. And as for everyone else, nobody actually had a happy ending though. It's kind of interesting that everyone else rather had a common sense of satisfaction that was only achieved briefly though. And it's funny that all of these instances, everyone's end goal was rooted with lust. For example, I want to point out some characters in the show. Ito wanted more than a simple relationship with Katsura and didn't get it enough with her. So he let his lust and inability to right his wrongs with other girls, and he became this twisted asshole that he is at the very end. And it led everyone to abandon him, and also it led to his murder. And then with Saonji, she wanted to take Ito away from everyone else, and in the only way that she kind of knew how. She wanted to be really friendly and helpful for him. She wanted to seem more helpful and pleasing for him, for his needs, and essentially did all of his bidding, all rooted in lust, with the sexual favors and all of that. Losing him before her own very eyes though at the end, after being interested in him for years, even before Kyoto had feelings for him, she took it upon herself to end it all, to prevent anyone else from taking him away from her, and killed him. And we see Sawanaga developed the resolve to express his interest for Katsura with no holds bars. Sawanaga caused the twisted rape of Katsura that caused confusion and hurts upon himself when Katsura went up to him and told him that everything that happened at that night meant absolutely nothing, because in his mind he thought it was consensual, but he forced himself upon her. It didn't seem like she was in the zone. She wasn't there. He still went for it though. With that, he held Ito to blame, and he scolded him, telling him that he needed to make things right between these girls, between the relationships that he's been having with everyone. And then we get with Kyoto, who is pretty interesting in her own right. She is apart from lust. She wanted to be with Ito. However, when she realized that Saonji had feelings for him as well, somehow she ended up helping her express herself more straightforward to Ito before Kyoto herself moved away. And she never wanted to be discovered that she liked him, other than Saonji knowing. Saonji was the only one that knew. Kyoto did let her emotions and lust get the best of her. When she was alone with Ito and he was asleep, she ended up kissing him, and Katsura saw this, but I don't believe that she would have ever gone anything further than that. She wanted to let it be at that, just a kiss. And so, because she still had some feelings for Ito, when she was making bargains of sex with Ito so that he'll promise to make a proper decision regarding him being with either Saonji or Katsura, she was able to have sex with him. This was, I would say, also a rape scene. It was not truly consensual between the two parties. Ito essentially forced himself upon her and took advantage of the situation. He did seem a little bit drawn back, but I don't believe that asshole, held back at all at the open opportunity. And what made it worse was that when she was making the ultimatum, Kyoto began crying because, like I said, she does feel some attraction to him, but she cannot believe that she's in this situation, in the situation that she was at that point. And then moving aside from that, while everyone got what they wanted, it was with a sour taste in their mouth at the end of it all. Everyone probably felt regrets. The motivations for the characters were all driven by lust, and they didn't properly, or the writers didn't properly set up much attachment towards the viewer and the cast, except for Katsura, only because she was very inexplicably mistreated and emotionally scarred, as we saw throughout the series. We didn't see much character change to help us connect more to the characters, especially with how it was stated that Ito changed from being this kind and caring guy to the fuckboy that he became at the very end. And then we see switch in roles where Saionji, knowing Kyoto liked Ito in the very beginning as part of a flashback, how did it actually switch though from Kyoto seeming uninterested in Ito anymore, plus helping Saionji with her crush on the same guy? Unless I missed something, this wasn't properly explained or alluded to at any point, because Saionji was seen trying to help Kyoto get pictures of Ito. She was egging him on about it. So how it actually switched, I don't know. If anyone wants to explain that to me down in the comments, please do so. But then we get to this. How the hell did this relationship even fucking happen between Kyoto and Ito? How did they end up sleeping together? Kuroda had a crush on Sawanaga throughout the series at the very beginning. It was assumed that it would be like a relationship where she would be trying every now and then, you know, that was her role with Sawanaga. But the feelings were never mutual, especially because he liked Katsura. The only interaction between Kuroda and Ito were only because Saionji was mutual friends. So there was no real like growing interest between these characters. There was no sign of it. So at that moment when we were abruptly taken to that scene, it was at that point I realized that there was a serious issue with the drive between all these characters, making them want to have sex and for random reasons. And that is because of the writing of the story. I mean, hell, the fucking prick got into a four-way just cause why the fuck not? But having ranted about that, let me get into my final thoughts about this series. The animation is what you'd expect from a 2007 anime. Having said that, it is still a very poor excuse for the disappointingly flat style and animation that we got. At points, it has some good animation, but it is very inconsistent with the character design and the animation of the whole as a whole. There are only two memorable scenes, and one of them being when Saionji and Ito were in the room together after we had thought that Saionji went to the clinic. In this scene, it was silent and awkward on purpose. This was actually pretty good. It gave suspense to the scene. It was kind of comical as well. So there were elements of both, depending on how you look at it. That is something you want the audience to feel. That you want them to feel an attachment to the what's going on in the scene. Not only that scene, but there was a scene leading up to Ito's death. Not only because of how satisfying it was, but because of how it was carried out. There was suspense when he was reading the text, and up till when Saionji came up behind him and lunged at him. It was very suspenseful, and it was very extreme in that scene, and it was one of the most memorable scenes that you could probably remember from the whole anime, unless you're only watching it for the fan service and all that other bullshit. Which leads me to the writing and character development of the show. It is almost non-existent. Even for a harem ecchi anime, the character development and the investment is what makes someone favorite and like a certain character or characters, or not, you know. But it should still be a very important trait any form of media should have, be it a cartoon, a comic, anything. So I could only find myself feeling one way or another for the characters, except for Saionji. But Katsura, you know, I supported her. I really wanted her to come out of this winning. Ito, he could run hell. I was neither, like I said, I was neither here or there for Saionji. But with Kyoto, you know, I sympathized with her. but that was pretty much it. Didn't really feel other ways with her. And basically that's all you needed to get a vibe of to understand the character's writing or the character's purpose in the show, which to me seems to be a very lazy thing to do if you're the writer of a show, because they hoped that you would fill in the gaps yourself as you're watching. It's not something that you should be proud of if that's how a viewer leaves after watching your show. So if I could give the show a generalized statement of what it is, it would be this: that the anime takes you into this wild trip to an erotic and dramatic high school alternative that ends essentially in despair and anguish for everyone. This series will leave you scratching your head and shaking your head, screaming at your monitor as I was throughout many of the episodes, and make you wonder what the fuck you did wrong in your high school years. I greatly appreciate what the series tried to do in the anime. I'm not speaking for the visual novel because I have never read the visual novel, or have I ever really looked into it much. The anime incorporated the regular harem cliques and hinted towards a subtle psychological horror theme, as we could see with the deterioration of Katsura's mindset, especially at the end when everything was just unleashed. All hell broke loose with the gore that we got with Ito's murder and Saionji's autopsy. So all in all, you know, I will recommend this anime if you don't care about wasting 11 episodes of your time. This leads up to a chaotic end, a very bittersweet end. It is not an anime that I expect everyone to love. I would feel that it needs to be appreciated rather and added to anyone's watch list. I do recommend that. And that is pretty much everything I wanted to talk to you guys about with this series. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you think this is a good anime, if you think it is a bad anime, or if you think I was completely wrong and it is a complete miss, and you don't recommend it to anyone to actually ever watch. Let me know down below what you think. Did I leave something out? Want to add something to my own commentary? I'm open for new ideas. Let me know down below as well. For new ideas on anime or episodes that you want me to watch, or if you want to comment on my channel directly, something that I should do differently, all of that, leave it down below. I will be adding a discussion comment on my discussion tab on my channel, so that you guys could talk about school days moving forward. And once again, you guys, thanks for sitting down with me to talk about anime. And until the next video, I will catch you guys here on the Anime Torta.